which really it was kind of like, okay, we've got this filmmaker coming to show these films at NYU. I really should take the opportunity to do something with teachers. And the films are not a cultural production of the Middle East. It's not really an engagement with popular culture in that way. I just want to underscore that I think the films do have some value. I'm happy to loan them to you, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to get more copies of them so I can easily distribute them if there are multiple requests. The 9/11 film.
They're $1.99 on iTunes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they're available on iTunes?
$1.99.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's great. So that's easier and better watching than but, the first film, I'm sure it's already come across, but it really is, it almost acts as a memorial in and of itself. I mean, it is, I think, effective in that way. And Robbie and I were talking about this, it kind of covers you. The only thing I'll say, did any of you, no one, I don't think anyone from this group was at the screening last night, but has anyone seen the movie? You've seen it on iTunes.
Yeah.
So I just want to give you a heads up. Definitely watch it before you use it. Obviously you're doing that anyway, but really watch it before you use it, because there's so much footage in this film that I myself had never seen or never seen in that chronology, and it some of it's quite horrible.
Even the opening scenes, I mean, just the impact.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is horrible, but I knew that would be in the movie, but the jumping people.
Jumpers, yeah, which was not shown on US TV, really.
Right, so that's pretty traumatic. I'm not saying I actually think students see a lot worse than that all the time, but this was real events and so forth. The Bin Laden film, and if you are free tomorrow night, I encourage you to come, but it's...
Monday night?
I'm sorry, Monday night, thank you, not tomorrow night, thank goodness. Monday night at 5 in this room.
And will he speak before or after?
Both. And it sort of will change how you view the film to hear the filmmaker talk about what his goals were and the story leading up to making the film and so forth. But the Bin Laden film does a lot more about what we're trying to do in that it still has the parameters of, the search for Bin Laden, but because it covers more history, you do get a sense of this kind of conflicted U.S. role in the region and so forth. And I think, and there's a lot of treatment of 9/11 in the Bin Laden film. Just to say that, to kind of contextualize things, they're long films, so I don't know if they honestly will work for anyone in this group. I don't know. But I'm looking for feedback on that, and maybe with the teachers involved with this kind of year-long project, we can think about identifying useful clips and so forth. So stay tuned for that. And we're winding down on time here, and there may still be some comments. I just want to tell you a couple more things, which is when I invited these 4 teachers to share their thoughts with you, a couple of them sent me emails with lists of links, and I've also been taking notes on particular resources. So I promise by next Friday at the latest, I'll send an email with a list of the things that have been mentioned, at least all of the ones I was able to capture. And if you want me to add something that you know about to that list, just send me an email and I'd be happy to add it. In your packets, please don't forget to leave an evaluation with me. You can just leave them face down over here or on some surface, and I'll find them after you're gone. And I just wanted to encourage you all you have the fall calendar, and many of you have already signed up for the other workshops that are happening this fall on Women of the Uprisings and Spotlight on Egypt. If you're wanting to attend those and you haven't signed up, just sign up by following the instructions. But I just want to underscore you're always welcome to attend the other events as well, which are on the reverse side of the poster. And all of those events are open to the public, so you're welcome at any time. Some are more boring than others, and you can usually tell by specificity of the title or something. I don't know.
If somebody's reading from their PhD.
Yes. I don't know.
Dissertation.
I've developed a sense about these things, but the research workshops, I will say, are more, you're supposed to read the paper before, so that's a bit more of a commitment. And then if you haven't read the paper, you're kind of in the dark as to what's going on in the event. Please do attend those if you're free. And I think, I'm not sure exactly what time it is, but I know we're approaching 3 and I want to make sure.
42.
Okay. So if there are any, I've done my business. If there are any last comments or questions from anyone, feel free. Or I killed the mood.
I have a question here, because I mean, the four of us got a chance to. Is there anyone in the audience who's doing anything particular that was sort of different about teaching 9/11? They wanted to share?
Well, I think maybe I should explain where I'm coming from. I was sitting here listening to your schools, your classes. I'm fascinated. We were in 28. I think the Daily News or the Post ranked us for 28 in the city as far as public schools. Yet, nonetheless, our students generally come into the school with. How do I say this nicely?
They lack some basic foundational knowledge
Basic
and
foundation.
skills. We sometimes
For example, I usually we start out the year with some type of pre-assessment. Do they know anything? Last year was my first year teaching freshmen, and I thought I would just give them a blank map of the world. Do we know our continents and oceans? That didn't go over so well. There were 14. So that's an example.
14 continents?
No. There were 14.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just was like, what?
They
I
couldn't
wouldn't be
place,
surprised.
Europe or
Yeah.
Africa or
Right.
even the United States.
Yeah.
And I've done something similar with 11th graders, which is primarily what I've taught for my 10 years there. And they generally find New York or Florida, Canada. They can identify. So they're really lacking that basic knowledge. So listening to you guys, it's like a fantasy land where you teach. I can't imagine. And so I'm looking at this from a completely different perspective when dealing with the topic of 9/11. Even just where is Afghanistan?
or what is Islam? Like
Yeah.
just knowing that Islam is a religion.
And any even basic
That-
understandings of the religion.
They come in without the knowledge that Islam is a religion. That, I say, what are the 3 major monotheistic religions? Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism? Like they just, so starting off from that base, I think that we, throughout this workshop, have sort of been struggling with like, okay, how can we take some nuggets of what you guys are, which is, these units, I would love to be in these classes that you're teaching. I would love to sit through these classes and read some of the things that you guys are giving the kids and participate in these discussions. I'm just trying to figure out where in this discussion I can pull out things that will work with the population that we have, which is, and then you have the pressure, the constant pressure of that Regents exam that is really such a struggle for the kids that we have to pass. It's not, like, I think in some schools it's sort of a walk in the park, like, oh, Regents exams, no big deal, but for our kids it's really something that they have to climb up a mountain for. So I'm processing.
I think then, it seems that you, of course, meet them where they are. Always hold those high expectations and they will surprise you, but I also think there are a lot of web resources that might be more appropriate to you and your students rather than the print resources, say, from the Council on Foreign Relations. Although the Council has also these, multimedia modules. So I just think if we could help identify some good web resources, because your kids would probably benefit from the visual in addition to the textual.
There's a wealth of excellent materials on teaching about Islam, and it's been out there for 15 or 20 years, some of it. because I've studied a lot of this in 1998, and already my favorite resources were already out there, but they don't.
Again, I don't
No.
wanna toot your horn again, but I'm going to anyway, the Kevorkian
Yeah.
Seminar on Islam.
Yeah.
Greta provided us tremendous materials that I'm now using with my 8th grade.
I think
So
that-
it's not all,
Yeah, I mean, you're pointing out, that's the, this gulf is, I think, more the norm than, the level of our discussion today. And I don't, I think there must be a way to try to meet it. One of the problems that I think all of the topics that we do these workshops about here, I know that the problem is that this isn't in the textbook, or it's not in the framing of every school, of every teacher that ever enrolls in these things. So, it's a challenge, and it's sort of like, these are big questions and kind of almost policy level changes,
I just always, I teach at the same school you guys do, right? Like, I teach at a public school, I have the same issues. My students have to pass all of the regions within 4 years, even if they've been in the country 2 years, right? So, like, I always sit here and I'm always like, it's always just a little bit insecure. I'm like, this all sounds great. His one-day lesson is 3 months for me, right? And
Right.
like,
Yeah.
okay, and so that's at the expense of, like, not teaching, I don't know, the American Revolution. Like, what do you do? But I just know, what I always appreciate about all of these conversations is my students, in some ways it's language, but in some ways it's just basic knowledge from, fundamentals, but the ideas are there. And then I like that it gets into this conversation of, okay, what are these big ideas that we need to create that foundation, and then where can you go with it that'll motivate those students to learn more on their own, on the web, with these resources.
they may not have the knowledge, but they're intelligent students,
I think this is also speaks to one of the problems, or sort of sometimes comes up in history classes and thinking about what do we do with students. I don't think history is about teaching a what. History is about a why, going back to what Kyle said. And if you give students a reason to want to learn about something like this, you find those hooks at the beginning, okay? It doesn't matter what they come to it with, they'll say, well, wait a second. Like, they'll start asking questions. And that's why, I don't know if, the same time I first talk about 9/11, I talk about some big pop song. There's things in their lives. Understanding why a big pop song has become a global phenomenon is actually the exact same process as understanding 9/11. And if you give kids a reason to want to learn about the past and try to make sense of it, I'm amazed by their abilities on so many levels. This is, I think, the problem that we sort of came up in here with history. It's so caught up in these facts, these things that they need to know. They don't. Give them questions. Throw wide open-ended questions. I've done this with little kids, at the school when they're so little, and you let them run.
And just to push back on that a little bit, because you
Those
have
are
this
regions.
huge test.
Yeah.
You're going to hold your students back, and your school's going to go down from that placement each time someone doesn't graduate with their cohort. I tell my students, I tell them up front, like, you're going to take this gigantic test, and I'm not going to teach you everything that's on it. For better or for worse, I'm like, and just don't, there's not going to be enough time. And I think sort of tackling that, knowing that, but I'm going to give you the skills as to how to learn. And I'm going to give you the skills on how to think about this, and then reckoning it some way. Because I agree with you, but I just know there's heat on me to get them through, and do justice to the material, do justice to the students, but also keep my school open,
I'd love to ask you guys a question. It's something I had noticed really in the last year or two, in that so I'm in my 11th, I think I just went into my 11th year teaching, and if I go back 5, 6, 7 years ago and talking about 9/11, there was usually the discussion wound up somehow about where does Saddam Hussein fit, and why did the government blow up the Twin Towers? And that seems to be gone now. Have you had that experience as well, that the students have sort of lost those conspiracy theories over the past few years?
It's just longer ago.
This might be a
I'm on the
difference
radar.
of population as well. My students
Yeah.
didn't have those.
Really?
My students do.
Yeah,
And
no,
so do most of students
I-
still do.
Really?
I had very few this year who really could, verbalize those
Wow.
the way they had in the past. Some of them had some sort of, oh yeah, maybe I had heard about that a long time ago.
I had kids
feel
this year who were saying that it was President Bush
Right.
from the place to the tower. So.
I still do. But I teach special ed students who come with even fewer skills, but they still believe that the number of them.
Believe what? I'm sorry.
That it was our own government conspiracy.
They need to come to
Well,
work.
the links to Saddam Hussein, I think were, I don't know, I mean, I'd like to think we've sort of moved away from that moment, but I mean,
As the
the whole,
American public, we have not.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, I mean, we went to war over it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised to find that there's actually a diminishing of
Well, I think
linking the
they were
Iraq War and Saddam
three
Hussein.
when this all began, so
Yeah.
now they've never even heard of
They,
Saddam
they
Hussein.
weren't there when the.
Right.
Yeah.
They've never heard
Saddam
of
Hussein is fading.
Yeah, they've never heard the name before.
And I think there's a Vietnam thing going on too. Americans are willing themselves into amnesia on Iraq. Right? We really don't want to remember it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this, 20 years from now, 9/11 is going to be taught a lot different.
Murkier.
It's taught different now than it was 5 years ago, and 10 years from now, it's going to be taught even. I'm not sure how it's going to come up in the curriculum. Like Pearl Harbor would come up?
Right, I was talking about that this morning, how whereas we're at a point now where I feel like, I'm looking at some of my colleagues and so being like, well, how are you not covering 9/11? Some of my younger colleagues, I should say, not very old. And I can only imagine that must have been going on with Pearl Harbor, that as you grew further and further away from Pearl Harbor, and it was not sort of
The difference was World War II followed Pearl Harbor. So in the narrative of World War II, Pearl Harbor had a place. The war between Americans and whoever it is, the war on terror. I mean, if this just sort of evaporates now, and after Iraq and we're out of Afghanistan, and we go back to sort of the 70s, 80s, 90s kind of status quo, periodic riots or assassinations, then maybe 9/11 will become like the attack on Wall Street in 1920. No one remembers that, but there was a wagon full of dynamite outside of J.P. Morgan's bank, blew up, killed a couple of dozen people. It looked like, a really huge event. Now it's a footnote.
never heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay, the room is quiet. So, thank you everyone for.
Thank you.